Good evening. My name is Gerald Scunyers. Allow me to explain the process involved in federal disaster declaration. Disaster can strike anywhere at any time. Events that cause serious loss, destruction, hardship, and death happen more often than ever imagined. When a catastrophe hits, it's important to have processes in place to ensure that the loss of life can be avoided if all possible or minimized to the best of the local and state government's ability. The local and state government is responsible for assisting the civilian population. They are responsible for evacuation if necessary, and they carry the responsibility of maintaining order during tragic times. Hurricane Katrina in August of 2005 was the single most deadliest and destructive hurricane recorded. It was the most costly hurricane in the nation's history. The total damage was estimated at $81 billion, and then unfortunately over 1,800 people lost their lives. Hurricane Katrina should have never happened. The events that followed immediately could have been avoided. I'm reminded of a scripture where it reads in Genesis the 6th chapter and the 14th verse of the Bible, "Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Room shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without pitch." The purpose for the ark was to prepare the people for a disaster that was soon to come. The disaster was a huge flood that would bring down torrential rains for 40 days, which would cause unimaginable devastation, similar to that of Hurricane Katrina. However, because Noah had a disaster plan in place and understood the process, he and his family were able to survive the disaster. The preparation allowed them to get back on their feet and return to their way of life. Disaster happens every day. It seems in our country from one end to the other. But what makes the difference is when departments know how to effectively act in a timely manner. Therefore, allow me to explain the process involved in the Federal Disaster Declaration. There is a procedure for presidential declarations to be made. It requires that the governor of the affected state requests that the president declares the area a disaster zone. That request should be made through the local FEMA office. The report should include what the governor needs and what is the estimated cost. The governor should also include what part of the cost the state will cover and what resource they have available themselves to assist in the recovery efforts. The state and federal officers conduct a preliminary assessment of the damages. In their report, it includes the damages, the impacts on civilian population, public facilities, property damages, estimates, and it should show how the disaster is beyond the local and state capability to handle the situation themselves. This report is then forwarded by the governor of the particular state that has been devastated. The report is normally submitted prior to the governor request. However, when a disaster is obvious, it can be submitted afterwards. Nevertheless, it still must be made by the governor of that state. After the president receives the request and the declaration is approved, the next step would be to figure out what kind of assistance is then needed. Now that the declaration has been made, what resources are needed? What kind of help is the next question? No need to show up with a water hose and there is no fire. So what are the options? There are three categories. FEMA disaster assistance falls into three general categories. These three categories are pivotal in getting the correct help at the appropriate time. Number one is individual assistance. This department or function of FEMA deals with aid to individuals and households. This particular department offers assistance to people who have lost their home. They provide money and services to people whose property that is damaged, especially those not covered by insurance. The purpose is to ensure that people have a safe place to live. What's important to note is that these resources are only available for homeowners and renters who are United States citizens. These services consist of the following: temporary housing, repair, replacement, permanent housing construction, other needs assistance, small business administration, disaster loans, disaster unemployment assistance, legal services, special tax considerations, and crisis counseling. Next up, public assistance. This particular department's primary purpose is oriented to public entities. It's designed to fund the repair, restoration, reconstruction, or replacement of a public facility or infrastructure which is damaged or destroyed by a disaster. Note, due 30 days after the area has been designated eligible is a project worksheet required, which should include a list of needs assessed and a plan of action that has been put in place. A combined federal, state, local team proceeds with project formulation, which is the process of documenting the eligible facility, the eligible work, and the eligible cost for fixing the damages to every public fixture. These include debris removal, emergency protective measures, road systems and bridges, water control facilities, public buildings and contents, public utilities, and also parks and recreational areas. Last but certainly not least is hazard mitigation assistance. Hazard mitigation assistance include funding for measures designed to reduce future losses to public and private property. Hazard mitigation refers to sustained measures enacted to reduce or eliminate the long-term risk to people and property from natural hazards and their effects. In the long term, mitigation measures reduce personal loss, save lives, and reduce the cost to the nation by responding to disasters proactively rather than reactively. And remember, the federal government can provide up to 75% of the cost, with some restrictions, of course. State or local government provides 25% from a combination of cash and in-kind sources. Other services include acquisition and demolition of property, relocation, elevation, and flood proofing. Thank you for listening.